I wish we could find something to like, fix it. It's a delicate topic, and it's, I don't think there's a bandage that fixes everybody, but I think if we can get more people moving, that, movement tends to be medicine, and hopefully we can, get people, in a good direction.
Our next guest on the pod is a legend in the ultra running community. He's been running over 100 miles a week for the past 223 weeks. For all you running mathletes, that's over 4 years going. He does it all with a smile on his face, because if you're not smiling, you're doing it wrong. We are wicked excited to welcome Andy Glaze to the On the Run podcast. What's up, Andy?
What's going on?
We're so pumped to have you, Andy. You are one of my ultra running inspirations, just being out there, being happy about all these grueling, tough races, and you make me want to try harder during my races. So thank you for being an inspiration, and thank you for joining us on our show today. We're so pumped.
Of course. Yeah, my master plan is working then if you're out there running because of me. Or I'm inspiring you to run hard things.
One of the last notes I have is how you're inspiring others, and I guess Erica just got to that right away. You're inspiring her.
Well, I love your content on the socials just because you're fun with it. Like you're just trying to enjoy what you're doing, and like you said, if you're not smiling, you're not doing it right. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can follow professionals who are like really good at it. I'm just kind of like, mediocre, but I'm having a good time, and hopefully inspiring people to dip their toe in the ultra world.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So,
well, I think you were inspiring a friend of ours a while back. We had a girl on, her name was Abby Bandai, and she was doing her first ever ultra, the Rocky Raccoon 100. And as we're following her story, and she's at the starting line, she has the camera in front of her, and then she kind of pans it over to her friend Matt Johnson, and then behind him was you, and she goes, "Guys, not a big deal. It's my first 100-miler, and look who I'm with."
Yeah.
Do you recall? So I talked to Abby just before this. Do you recall eating sushi at one of the aid station tables?
Yeah, I mean, loop courses, I normally bring sushi. That's like my but I've definitely eaten a lot of sushi at Rocky Raccoon.
Abby would like me to tell you that it was her sushi, but she has no problem with it. She was so happy to supply you some great food.
Steal sushi. I did. For one, I'm vegan, so I have to bring very specific sushi.
Really?
I definitely did not eat anybody else's sushi.
I'll let her know, or she'll know when she hears it. We were talking earlier, and she was talking about that race and how brutal the weather was. I think it just got really muddy, and it's 5 laps of a course, I think, and the last lap was just like super brutal for everybody.
Yeah. I've done that race 3 times, and I normally do it in I think, man, I'm so bad with my results, but I think normally under 19 hours, so like 18 something, and last year took me like 23 hours. So it was very, very, very brutal as far as we got like this crazy rainstorm, and there was a lot of sections where you're like knee deep water. And then when you weren't in the water, you were just in like ankle deep mud the whole time. And, it's like, I'm not a mud runner. So, it was very, very challenging for me, but, got it done. But yeah, if you do Rocky Raccoon 5 years, you bring your buckles, the buckles are like this big, and you bring them and you turn them in, and they give you this giant buckle that's like this big. Nice. It's like a 5-year buckle. So I'm slowly working my way up to 5 years at Rocky Raccoon so I can get that giant buckle.
You're well on your way.
You just hit 3, you said.
Let's say I've done 3 years. So yeah, next year will be 4, and then hopefully I can do it another year.
Do they have to be consecutive?
No, you just need 5 finishes.
Perfect.
So it's a really good, I think, first 100, because it only has like 6,000 feet of vert, so it's pretty flat. And with a looped course, you have a lot of access to crew, which is always really nice. Like, I think technically you don't go further than like maybe 5 miles without an aid station. So really, you don't even really need to carry much, which is always nice as well. The only thing with Rocky is it's in February, so sometimes it's really, really cold there. Like I think the first 2 years I did it, the start line was like 20 degrees, which which is pretty brutal. But yeah, I mean, it's a good first 100 for sure.
Is that one in Texas? Was that where it was?
Yeah, it's right outside of Houston. It's like
Gotcha.
in a swamp. So there's technically alligators in the swamp, but I think normally in February it's too cold for them to
They're going to leave you alone.
Yeah, someone sent me a picture of like they did see one last year, but it was just sleeping in the water. So
it can stay. It can stay in the water.
Yeah, I want to see one. I was like, there's one in I think December called Brazos Bend, which is also in Texas, and it's notorious for having alligators like sleeping on the trail.
No.
So as I do ultras, I like to collect the amount of animals I've seen while running ultras, and then like I'd like to bucket list a alligator. Like I think that'd be cool.
You know what I call that? I call that a code brown.
It really is.
Yeah, you would definitely code brown if you saw a big old alligator for sure.
So out of your list of animals that you've seen, what's the coolest and or scariest one that you've encountered?
I mean, I've seen a mountain lion, which is not really super cool. I mean, it's cool, but it's pretty scary. Well, one time I was doing a 100-miler and I was chasing a sub 24, which was really important to me. And at mile 75, there was a giant bear on the trail and wouldn't get off the trail. And I was a bit out of my mind at the time and decided I was going to start barking at it and like try to chase it off the trail, which my pacer was not super thrilled with, but it did work. Apparently bears do not like dogs. So, but it was a giant bear. I've seen rattlesnakes and stuff like that too, but I'd say the bear was probably it was very close to me, maybe like 20 feet away. So.
Yep, I would have code browned myself. Yes.
Yeah. Well, when you're 75 miles in, you're a bit out of your skull. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you don't
get a little bit more brave that way.
Yeah, fear is probably a different emotion.
Over the weekend when I was doing my ultra, it was probably 2:00 in the morning. I was running with I believe he's a friend of yours, Ed Eddinghausen.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Jester?
The Jester, yeah, of course.
I shared several laps with him, and he was good company. But him and I were running, and we were hearing some real weird noises in the woods. And I was like, is that an owl? I can't tell what it is. And I think it was some kind of, like, big cat. So we just kind of picked it up at that point and just went. We never saw what it was. We never heard it again. But thankfully I had a friend with me, so I didn't freak out.
You just push him down and then run faster.
I offered him one of my poles. I'm like, all right, you can have one, I can have one, and together we might be able to fend this thing off. So, but Andy, we really should get into why we're here. We want to hear about you, about your running stories, but we kind of need to get to know you a little bit better first. So why don't we get into how you started running? Like, what's your, I guess, origin story? Like, what got you into sports? Were you active as a kid? Did you just love running forever? Like, how did it happen?
Yeah, I definitely did not love running as a kid. I pretty much played football my whole, like from third grade all the way through high school. And that was, in football, running is like a punishment. So like when you get in trouble, they make you go run. So
I feel like it is for a lot of sports, right?
Yeah. So there wasn't like a big, like me loving running. And then I definitely, like when I went to college, I was very unhealthy, like smoked cigarettes. I remember talking to people who ran, and I just I couldn't like wrap my head around it. Like they're like, oh yeah, no, I wake up early and then I go run like 6 miles, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like I just I didn't know this was something that people like did. And I remember I took like a class in college, and like I had to do my resting heart rate. My resting heart rate was like 85, and I'm like 20 years old, so I was like really unhealthy. And after college, continued being pretty unhealthy. Like didn't work out, didn't do anything, and I started getting like really bad anxiety and like depression kind of things, and like felt terrible, and didn't I didn't know what a panic attack was. And I didn't, this is kind of like the internet just before WebMD and before you could like listen to a podcast and like self-diagnose, you just like kind of had to like raw dog life. And
Yeah.
so I was having all these like symptoms, and somebody suggested like, hey, like you're young, like exercise might be like a good solution. And so I got a personal trainer and I started like working out. I didn't run. I did like the elliptical trainer and I lifted weights and did all that stuff. And then, it started to make me feel better. So I was like, oh, I need to learn more about this. And, again, there's internet, but like, very limited back then on like the type of information that was on there. So I signed up for a local community college class because like back in the day, if you wanted to learn things, you either read books or you took college classes. And so I took this college class on exercise science, trying to learn more about it. And, one of the things we had to do was run 1.5 miles the first day and then like 1.5 miles at the end of the semester, just, and try to improve your time. And so I started running, I ran this 1.5 miles and it was terrible. It was like, yeah, I ran 1 mile and then I had like 2 loops to go. And then, I just like ate shit the last 2 loops. And so I'm like, oh, I need to get better at this. And I'm like one of those people that's, if I suck at something, then I'm going to like try to get better. And so I just kept trying and running. And then by the end of the semester, I was able to like do the 1.5 miles, like faster and better and stronger. And, but I remember that first 1.5 miles, I was super sore. Like I couldn't even like sit on the toilet, and this is just running 1.5 miles, right? That's how out of shape I was. So I was like, well, if I just keep running, then I'll never get to this point again where I'm like so sore I can't sit on the toilet. Of course I didn't know that I'd be running, 100, 200 mile races where I still can't sit on the toilet after these races.
That's the worst part.
Nothing's changed, just the distance.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just never stopped after that, and it just like progressed. So, I obviously stopped smoking cigarettes. I started getting healthier, and running became like a more central focus in my life. With also lifting weights and doing all that stuff. And, I started doing little 5Ks and 10Ks. And then I was like, at one point I'm like, oh, I'm going to train for a marathon. And I tried to train for a marathon. I think I got up to like 18 miles and then I got an overuse injury. And then that didn't happen. But like I just kept charging forward. And that's pretty much the origin story of me running, which was, 20 something years ago. So I've been running for a long time. I wish I had like a really good record of how many miles, like Camille, she has like her 100,000 mile, like where she's kept track of everything. And I don't have that, but on Strava, I have 55,000 miles. So
that's incredible.
And I've only had Strava for, 10 or 11 years. So I wonder how many miles I have, but it's probably a fair amount.
That's insane. I can barely run. I've never even reached like 2,000 miles a year. And like even that, I'm like, wow, the people who do, I just have so much respect for, because that takes the discipline, that takes like planning, it takes being smart and cross training and not getting injured. So I just haven't nailed that yet.
2,000 miles is amazing. I remember when I hit my first 1,000 miles, I was like super impressed, It's 2,000 is like, it's really impressive. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too bad for only running 2,000 miles.
I've been trying to do like as a motivation factor. There's I don't know if it's a club or like what they are, but they run the year. So whatever the year is, you try to hit that in miles. So it just it keeps you motivated, kind of tries to get you in the habit of moving. It equates to something like 5-ish miles a day, and you could obviously switch it up however you need to, and I could just never get there by the end of the year. Like I would either be too tired or something would hurt, and so I'd have to give up on it. But one of these days I'll get there. But I have built myself a good habit, which is at least a good start.
Well, you have a good base, so it's like you can do whatever you want from that base. The hardest part about any of those like year-long goals or anything like that is always injuries,
Mm-hmm.
or getting sick, or, I mean, just life gets in the way,
Definitely.
So, I think that's always the challenge when it comes to when you set like a year-long goal is like, yeah, you feel good in the beginning, but then like in March when you get, you hurt yourself or, and it's not always an overuse injury. I mean, I've trip and fall and hurt myself, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's 1,000 ways to hurt yourself that will make it very challenging to continue to run.
Like you mentioned,
So,
even just getting the flu and it puts you out for like a
yeah,
solid week. Like it's
yeah. I
hard. It's
mean,
hard to come back from that.
it is 2 weeks of
Mm-hmm.
being on your back, like with a fever and, all that stuff is,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard on a streak. So,
Well, you have a pretty impressive streak right now, and I don't think it's your only streak. I think you've tried this before where you run 100 plus miles a week, and right now you're over 4 years worth. But when did this streak start? And I know it started before, like you attempted this one other time, right?
yeah, I did it. I mean, it's not really, I did it in 2000, I think 18 for 28 weeks. And then, Badwater took me out. Like I had a really bad experience at Badwater,
Mm-hmm.
and the streak ended. But yeah, now I'm actually at 224. I just finished my 224th week, which is
Excellent.
I think we're at 4.25 years now, or like over 4.25.
It's very
Um,
impressive.
yeah,
You got me on April Fool's Day, by the way.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, you
Well,
got me.
if you follow me long
For a
enough, I do that
second.
I do that every April Fool's joke. I mean, every year, and it like always gets people. But someday it'll be real. Someday that'll be a real video.
I was doing my homework today, and I came across the video today, and I go, "Oh wait, the streak ended."
Yeah,
And then I read the caption, and I'm like, "Ah."
Psych.
yeah. I know. I still have people coming up to me and being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry your streak ended," and I'm like, "Oh, that was April Fool's, dude. We're in July now. It's still going on." But I don't expect people to like follow me, like stalk me and know I make a video almost every day. So the amount of content I put out, I can't expect everybody to see every single thing I do. But it's yeah, it's still going on. I mean, it started kind of because of COVID. There was nothing going on, and I needed something to challenge myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I like running 100 miles in a week. I find that it's pretty challenging. So it's getting more and more challenging as I get older, and then also just 4 years of doing it it's a really long time.
Well,
But,
you're always doing all these like really difficult races too. So one of those races
Yeah.
a week, like
Yeah,
that'll at least
that
give you some recovery time on the other end.
it makes it so much harder to like when COVID was going on, it was like I didn't have anything else to do.
Mm-hmm.
I could just run. Like I think during COVID times, I ran over 8,000 miles both those years
Wow.
because there was just I could just run, and then once COVID ended, then the races came back, and then it was like I think I'm more down to like 7,000 miles a year because it's just a lot harder to maintain tapering, recovery, and
Mm-hmm.
doing like a bunch of really challenging ultras.
Yeah, you got to keep yourself healthy because you want to keep going.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there has to be a little bit of recovery and then also a little bit of tapering. So, yeah.
What are some of the bigger challenges you've had, like to keep the streak alive? What has attempted to get in the way from time to time?
I mean, I've had a lot of situations. Like we had a huge fire in Southern California a couple years ago that like made the air quality really, really bad for several weeks. And at the time, I was doing 200-mile weeks. So because in between this 100-mile a week streak, I did 18 200+ mile weeks. So
Wow.
and yeah, so I was running 200 miles a week, and the air quality was really bad, which is probably really unhealthy for me, but I did it anyways. That was pretty challenging. I've had a lot of injuries, a lot of nothing like no overuse injuries, but a lot of trauma related injuries, falls. I had a wall fall on me at work during a fire, and I hurt my ankle pretty bad. Ended up having like this like swollen ankle, and then it started like weeping, and I got like cellulitis in my ankle. And and I somehow was able to keep running. I've torn both my hamstrings multiple times. I'm extremely inflexible. And so if I fall sometimes, like my hamstrings just tear. So
Oh
I've had
no.
that happen multiple times. I've fell and broke a couple ribs at one point. And, I don't know if you've ever broken a rib, but it's really uncomfortable to run when you can't take deep breaths. I mean, I've gotten really sick, definitely a couple times. I don't get sick a lot, but I came back from Europe. I raced in Europe and came back, and I probably got some weird COVID variety I never tested myself, but it was definitely like
Bad.
a really, really bad sickness after being in Europe for like couple weeks, so the sickness I think is the hardest. Like injuries, like as long as I know they're not too bad, I can work through them. But sicknesses are hard because you just have no energy at all.
So what drives you then when you're super tired and you're sick or something? What's driving you to get 100 again that week? Or maybe sometimes you plan your weeks out so you can get ahead, and then you got a couple days just in case anything happens.
No, I don't really ever plan. I mean, I'm just always trying to get like kind of a certain number per day. I mean, what drives me is obviously I have like, some sort of intense fire inside that burns all the time. It needs to be like, extinguished. And the only way I know how to extinguish it is through running. Even when I'm sick, I still want to run. I just don't have like the energy, but I still want to like move.
It doesn't have to be like a fast run. You're still getting out there and doing something.
Yeah. I mean, I like that. When I feel terrible, that's like my favorite time to run. And even though I'm out there and I have a terrible run, like I enjoy that experience the most. Like I don't, everyone's like, oh, I haven't recovered. I don't feel good. I like, everyone loves that. Like when they run and they feel really good, but like, I like it when I run and I feel terrible the whole time and I have to keep pushing through, so when I'm sick, which I think has probably only happened like 3 times in the last 4 years, yeah, it's been really challenging, and then that makes it kind of cool, to like be so challenged that like I don't know if I'm going to make it. I like that feeling, like I don't know if I'm going to make it. That's a cooler experience for me than like knowing that I'm going to get it. So
Yeah.
I always tell people I'm always trying to like train where I'm at like mile 80. And if you run a 100-mile race, you know what mile 80 feels like. It feels fucking terrible. So, and you need to like, everyone's like, well, how do you train for a 100-mile race? And it's like, well, you got to train at those times when like you're tired and you're sleepy and you're so sore, you feel like you can't move your legs, because that's what you're going to experience towards the end of the race. And if you don't know how to move your body in those times, like you're not going to be successful, or you're going to feel like you want to quit. So
I can actually
I get a lot of mile 80
once.
training.
I can totally relate for once. I understand the pure exhaustion and the tiredness and just the need to do it, the need to finish.
And there's no way to like, you can't like run a 100-mile race to train for a 100-mile race. So the only way you can really like train for those moments is to like train when you're really, really tired or, sore, or, I mean, there's ways to emulate it, like run 20 miles and then the next day run 20 miles and the next day run 20 miles. Like I guarantee you your third 20 miler is going to hurt on a level that you're not used to. Or, I mean, there's ways to emulate it, but it's still, mile 80 just has its own vibe.
I like that. I know Erica wants to hear about some of your races, some of your stories and the memorable ones, and she has a few in mind. But before we get there, I want to ask one other thing about all the running you do. And you mentioned mental health, and you also mentioned your line of work. And you said before that running has kind of saved your life, and it helps with PTSD from your lifestyle and work. So elaborate on that a little bit with running and mental health.
Sure. I'm a firefighter and I'm a paramedic. So, probably more on the paramedic side of my job is like, you see a lot of like pretty terrible things, and a lot of us have like pretty significant, PTSD from what we've seen in our careers. And I've experimented with a lot of different ways to like deal with that, because it can be quite debilitating when you have like PTSD flare-ups, or like, I would call it a flare-up, but and I've found that like running is like one of the best things I can do to like sort of quiet my mind, especially like in ultras. I get to a point in an ultra where like my brain kind of clicks off, and I stop like really thinking about everything. I really am only thinking about like what I need to do to stay alive, like eating, drinking, that sort of stuff. I'm not thinking about all the other stuff in my world, and I find that very soothing. And then, obviously when you run, it releases a bunch of endorphins and things that make you feel better. So I found over the years that this is like a really like beneficial thing for my mental health. And then, talking to other first responders and encouraging them to exercise and whatnot, they have found similar things. So it's something I sort of preach, and it's something I try to like, push. I have obviously I have a lot of people following me on social media, and a good amount of those people are firefighters who, either follow me because they like to see me grind, or, whatever the reason. But I definitely, I push the mental health side of it quite a bit, just because, suicide is one of the number one killers of firefighters right now. And, I wish we could find something to like, fix it. It's a delicate topic, and it's, I don't think there's a bandage that fixes everybody, but I think if we can get more people moving, that, movement tends to be medicine, and hopefully we can, get people, in a good direction. I think, the young generation doesn't see it yet, because PTSD kind of stacks on top of it itself. So in the beginning, when you're new in your career, everything's exciting, and you don't realize that in 10 years of seeing, dead babies and, people's heads cut off and stuff like that, that like it adds up in your soul.
That's got to take a toll. I can only imagine.
But when you're young in your career, you don't get it. And so, but if I can get the young guys to like be moving and like, finding a good way to cope outside of drugs and alcohol, which I think a lot of firefighters tend to, really first responders, not just firefighters, cops, police, military, whatever, they tend, alcohol is a really easy, drugs and alcohol are an easy way to like deal with it, but it's, obviously it's not a great fix. It's more of like a temporary bandage, and all the pain and everything is still right underneath the surface. So, I preach a little bit, but I definitely am just trying to help people like deal with the pain. But I don't think that there's like a one size fits all. And, I think there's a lot of puzzle pieces, and you got to do a little bit of everything. So that's my like soapbox that I talk about a lot on social media, is just trying to help people with that.
Yeah. I've also found out in my research that you're very involved with your line of work and everyone, and trying to help get them at the firehouse or wherever. I don't know if you do talks, but you're like really focused on the younger generation coming up, firefighters and EMTs, and you get involved in their lives and try to help them mentally, physically be prepared and be ready for this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was a captain. I just promoted. I'm now a battalion chief, but before that, I was a captain. So I was in charge of a crew, and I definitely trained a lot of new hires coming into our department. So, I was able to influence a lot of the brand new guys coming into our department for several years. So, yeah. And, it's funny because, what do young guys look at? They look at social media, and then I have this huge following. So it's, everyone's always like, if anyone mentions Laverne Fire, they're always like, do you know Andy Glaze? And it's like, I work for a very small department. So of course everybody knows me at my department, because there's only a handful of us. So yeah, it's funny.
Well, I
Well,
think it's really awesome what you're doing, just giving it like another option that drugs and alcohol don't have to be what you turn to if you're struggling with something mentally, and there's just other ways to deal with it. So I love that you are trying to put that out there and trying to normalize taking care of your mental health. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like, everyone should be sober or anything like that. I just,
No. But
I think that,
it's nice
yeah,
to have another option.
yeah.
That was great. Thanks for talking about that too. Let's get into the storytelling portion of this podcast and some of these amazing ultras you've done. We want to hear some of your, like, not necessarily your favorite races or your worst, but just some of the more memorable moments. And memorable can be good and bad. I know Erica has a few. We know we want to definitely hear about Badwater because we're like so into Badwater every time it happens, and we know other people who've run it, and we watch the documentaries. But tell us some of your memorable ultra marathons that you have in mind.
You're kidding me.
Um,
Oh no.
I think in 2000, I think it was like 2016, I flew out to China and did a really fun race out there. It's probably my most memorable is like, it was actually Chris Kosman, who's the race director from Badwater, was trying to start a race out there. So a bunch of us Badwater people flew out to China, and it was like western China. So Erica disappeared. Is that all right?
She'll jump back on.
Okay. So southwestern China, which is kind of like the foothills of the Himalayas.
Mm-hmm.
And it took like 30 something hours to get out there. I mean, I had to fly. I had to land in like 3 or 4 regional Chinese airports. It was very, very remote. And
shit.
there was only like, I think 50 people that ran it. But basically, like, China was trying to get people to go to this region of China because it's kind of like their Yosemite. So it's like a volcanic area, and they have like hot springs and all this stuff. So they were like trying to encourage tourism in this area, and they're like, oh, we'll sponsor this race. So we start off, and we stayed in China for like a week, touring, going to like the hot springs, going to like ancient ginkgo biloba forests. And, it's like where all the jade comes from. So we went to like jade markets, and it was just really cool. And when we started the race, it was like starting like the LA Marathon. Like, they had fireworks going off, and like, there's just like 50 of us. But I got to run through rural like China on the old Silk Road, which was it's like a 10,000-year-old road that they used to go from like China to India to get like silk and spices. And there was like parts of the race where you were actually running on that road. We went through like these giant bamboo forests, and like we were literally running in like the foothills of like the Himalayas. So that was kind of cool too. The foothill of the Himalayas is like 9,000 feet, because the Himalayas are so big. And we had to wear a bear bell the entire time to scare the bears away, which was, so the whole time I'm running, I have to hear this like jingle, 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 which was so, I mean, it made me insane. But
how many hours did you have to listen to the jingle?
I think it took me 27 hours to finish it. I think I got 5th place. And I think it had 26,000 feet of climbing or something. It was a pretty rugged race as far as how many ups and downs we had to do. But we also, at like one point, I came out of the forest and I got to this aid station, and they started sprinkling all this red powder all over my legs. And I'm like, what's going on? And then someone like translated, basically said like, this is so the snakes don't bite you. And I was like, well, this is fun. And then they send us out into the darkness, like, so I had a bear bell, I got snake powder on my legs. It was pretty cool. But like, all the aid stations were, like, the village elder put them together. So like, you'd come into the aid station, and like everyone would want you to hold their baby and like take pictures. Cause I think they'd probably never seen anybody from the West before. Cause this is like really remote, like farming villages in China. They didn't have electricity or anything like that. So, they were still, it's like tier to agriculture where they're using, giant ox to plow the fields and whatnot. But that's probably one of my more memorable races, just because the whole experience was pretty wild.
At what point did social media come into play for you? Because you're very active, like we talked about on social media. So this was 2016. Were you like big in social media then? Were you documenting this stuff then, or when did that come in?
I documented it. I wasn't huge. Like more pictures. Like video wasn't like such a big thing in 2016. And even if you did videotape it, like the quality was pretty low,
which is amazing because in 2016 it was like the best, and now it's 2024. It's so, you watch something from back then, you're like, wow, that's vintage.
Yeah. I think I've been big in social media for, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years.
The way I remember was definitely Erica found you, and you're doing all these 100-milers during COVID, 100-mile weeks, right? That's around the time I remember finding you, and I was doing a little different. Erica was getting into the ultra marathon. She started with some 50-milers here locally in New England, and then she kind of stretched across. At the time, I was into all the triathlons and the Ironman, so I was like looking up all the Ironman content. She's doing all the ultra stuff and sending me all these videos of you. And then just watching you kind of explode and take off was a lot of fun. And the fact you do it consistently, you post a video every day, and that just like that it just slowly keeps growing, the consistency. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah. I've always been on social media, and I love like photography, and like, I like making videos, and I used to make them back in the day, but there just wasn't like I always had a GoPro, and I have some like videos on YouTube from like way back in the day when I was first starting that I made they're edited terribly, and they're like, it's just GoPro footage. But like with Reels and TikTok, it gave me like an ability to, I don't know, edit videos easier and like put them up easier. And, I was an early adopter on Reels, like where everyone was like, oh, Reels are cringe. You're cringe for making, I literally had people like delete me and be like, I hate what you're doing. I hate that you're making these videos. And, which, whatever.
The haters.
Yeah. I had early haters that people probably followed me just taking pictures and stuff. So I was an early adopter. So like when it comes to like running content, and especially ultra content, like I was probably like one of the first people to like be like, maybe Sage Canaday and me were like the only ones really making things back in the day. And Sage was more of a YouTube guy. So I think I just kind of got lucky that I threaded the needle like right when it was getting big. And now I have like, a larger following. So maybe it's easier. I don't know. Maybe it's harder. I'm not sure. But like it's definitely been a journey because, I never thought I'm an old guy, I'm like, not like a young kid. So I never thought that like my videos would be like getting like so many views. This month alone, I have on Instagram, 22 million views, just on Instagram. And that doesn't include TikTok and YouTube and all the, other stuff. Like, it's insane to think that, 22 million people watch my videos every month.
When you stick with it and post it daily and consistent, I get it. I see that. Erica is back.
You guys.
Erica is back. Word on the street is a big thunderstorm rolled through, and you lost power. She's in the dark. You look like
I'm using a lantern,
the girl
you
from
guys.
the Blair Witch Project right now. Half your face
I can't
is on
help
the screen.
it. I'm like... We never lose power. I'm in a very populated part of New Hampshire, and I didn't even hear any thunder, and then all of a sudden I see a flash of lightning and the power goes out. I'm like, what? What is this? So I apologize for the kind of janky way that I'm doing this now. But Hopefully it stays
The
connected.
Storm didn't know we had Andy Glaze on the pod.
Apparently not. Like it's really kind of sketchy right now. So I'm sorry of the stuff I missed, but I'll let you continue, and I'll try to pick up where we left off.
Well, one of the other races you've done, you mentioned before, I think you DNF'd this race. You've DNF'd a few during your time, and because you've done so many. But one you documented well, that at least I remember, is Badwater. And we really love the Badwater race, the 135. Tell us about your Badwater experience. And that is the video of your legs cramping, right?
Yeah.
Looks so painful.
So, I mean, getting into Badwater is obviously pretty hard. Like, they have like this panel and you have to like, write all these essays and everything. And then they judge you and like, it's a challenge to get in. So obviously if you're going to apply, you have to like put a lot of energy and effort into it. I had raced, I've raced Badwater Cape Fear multiple times. I've done Salton Sea multiple times. And then I did that one out in China, Badwater China race. And so, I tried to get in and then I got rejected. And I was like, what's going on? Like, how do I have like a pretty impressive resume and then like all this stuff. So I ended up going out and like volunteering with a guy and did his, like, I was his crew chief and helped him out. So I got to experience the race, and I would encourage somebody, if like you want to race Badwater, like Chris, the race director, really likes you to like be on a crew first before he'll let you in a lot of times. And it's a really good experience because you'll get to pace your runner. So you'll get to actually run in those conditions, and then just like watching what they need to like take care of them. So, and it'll give you a better understanding of what you need to do. So I went into Badwater thinking I knew what I needed to do. I live in a hot area. I live in like a desert. A lot of times during the summer, like last week it was 108, 110. So I'm used to running in pretty hot weather. And so I thought I knew what I needed to do. But I was wrong. So, I mean, basically what happened is I didn't take enough electrolytes. I thought I was taking enough in, and I wasn't. And my body started cramping, and I couldn't like catch back up. I tried, the best part about all those videos when I post like my legs cramping at Badwater or whatever is, everyone gives me their advice on what I should have done. And I mean, I legitimately tried everything from mustard packets to pickle juice to, electrolyte powders and this and that. And I was just like so far beyond the curve that I couldn't bounce back. Mm-hmm. So, and that will go down and I'll say this in preface that I've had kidney stones twice. The Badwater experience was the most painful experience of my life.
Oh, no.
2 solid hours of my entire body cramping, like, when you like wake up in the middle of the night, you got like a calf cramp and you're like, you can't get it out. My entire body was that for 2 hours. And, so when it finally stopped cramping, because I did get enough electrolytes on, I was toast, and, I hadn't peed, and there's just a lot of things going on. And I just decided I wasn't going to risk, my kidneys or my health. And I needed to like, not continue on. So, I DNF that, and it's a terrible race to DNF because it's like, you probably spent $5,000 to do everything, to get everything out there. And, so it's very expensive, plus all the training and everything. So yeah, that was a bummer, but, and it ended my streak. So there's a lot of like, sadness when that race didn't like work out. But, in all failure, you have a lot of important lessons. And, since then I've gotten a lot better at running in hot races and handling my electrolytes better.
You didn't have to be hospitalized after that one, did you?
But no, I literally drank fluids the entire way home. And when I got home, I peed, and my pee was not brown. So, I was okay.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm a paramedic, so I know what I should be looking for. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like, so it wasn't that I wasn't taking in enough liquid. It was that like electrolytes are very delicate in the body. And like, so I was actually like retaining liquid. So I wasn't like dehydrated, but I didn't have enough electrolytes to like make me want to pee. So until I got my electrolytes back into order, like my body was just like holding on to all those fluids. Whereas like rhabdo, which I'm sure people have heard about, is basically like severe dehydration, where the kidneys start to like break down and you start actually like peeing out your kidneys, which I've never had before, but I'm quite familiar with it because several guys at work have had it, and then being a paramedic, you run into people that have had it before. So
that's some scary stuff. Isn't it like when your muscles break down too, and your body tries to process it, and it just throws your whole system off too?
I mean, it's technically your kidneys that are breaking down. Okay. You're like peeing out, parts of your kidneys. Yeah, and then that's why it's like brown, and then the only solution to that is basically go to the ER, and they give you ridiculous amounts of IV fluid for days and days and days to like sort of flush you out.
Gotcha.
So, and then once you have it once, you're more susceptible to it like for the rest of your life. So,
wow. Well, let's talk.
Yeah, I didn't get that, but I was definitely like, I knew I was in a bad spot. So one thing about me is I'm not a death before DNF type guy. Like if something's wrong and I know it's wrong, I will pull the plug. Like I've DNF'd a lot of races, and I've also finished a lot of races. But if something's wrong and I know it's wrong, like I don't have an ego where I have to like, continue on just to prove to people that I can finish. Like, Well,
that's smart. You want to have the longevity.
My resume speaks for itself, and yeah. It's like I just don't care. Like if I fail or succeed, I mean, I'm always trying to succeed, but like, I think that, a good failure here and there is always good for the,
it's a good learning lesson sometimes too. You learn things like maybe nutrition wise. I was going to ask you for fueling. You mentioned you're vegan. Talk about fueling for these races. How have you found, like DNFs? You learn lessons about what you need to do, hydrating or getting food in your belly.
I haven't had two. I've had one DNF due to food. Normally, like I do pretty well with like taking in food. I have the ability to eat pretty solid foods all the time. So, I trained my stomach to be able to eat solid food while I ran, and that's been very beneficial to me in the ultra running community. One time I ate dark chocolate, and it did not agree with me, and I just like started puking, and I just like it turned into just a thing where, again, I was like getting my electrolytes out of balance because I was vomiting, and then I couldn't take in any more fuel, and I couldn't take water in. It was a hot race, and I just decided like I didn't want to continue on and like risk anything, because if you can't take in water or food in a 100-mile race, it's not going to be an enjoyable experience to like try to continue on. No fuel, no go. So that's really the only time, and I now stick away from dark chocolate if during races, but not too many food issues, but being vegan is pretty challenging, just because your options are a lot more limited, but maybe that's a good thing. Like, because like you don't have the smorgasbord of like things you can eat, Yeah.
Probably a lot of planning you have to do when you're traveling all these places with the food too, because the limits of food you don't eat or that you can eat.
Yeah, I mean it's like when I race in France a lot and in Europe, and there's not a lot of obviously vegan options, but like I found like as long as I'm giving myself fuel, like I can pretty much run forever. So it's like in France, for a couple years, I've just run and eaten just bread and drank Coke. And I've run 100 miles just eating bread and drinking Coke because that's all they had that I could eat. And it's like, yeah, it's not like super glamorous, or you just know, like, well, bread's carbohydrates and like Coke is carbohydrates. There's a little caffeine in there, and as long as I keep giving my body carbohydrates, like, I can keep going. So it's not as glorious as eating Spring Energy or drinking Tailwind or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's all the same.
Does the trick. So, yep.
And if your stomach can handle it, then in Texas, not a lot of vegan options. I think I ran 100 miles eating pretzels once. I run in Wyoming this last race, and the only things they had were like peanuts and dried apricots. So I had my own food, luckily, in Wyoming, but at the aid stations, the only things I could really eat were peanuts and apricots. And I was just like, well, that's what I'm going to need. That's what I'm going to do. So,
you do what you got to do.
True.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I get through it.
So Erica, now that you're back, and FYI, I can hear the storms now rolling through my neighborhood. I'm about 20 miles north of her. But now that you're back, I know you had a couple maybe races in mind. He mentioned France and running in those mountains up there.
Yeah.
You're the big ultra runner out of the two of us here, Erica. What do you want to know from Andy Glaze?
Oh, man. I'm so bummed that I missed out on this, but this makes me happy that I at least get to re-listen to it later, and it'll be like brand new. But I am just curious. Did you even talk about how you started getting into these big ultras? Let's start off there.
No, I just told him you missed a story about racing in China. That's all you missed.
Okay.
So
it's a good one. You'll enjoy it. But
okay,
how do you get into it?
Like, that's a big jump if you're starting from like marathons and stuff. But you had to make the jump into the ultra world at some point,
right?
And that you did.
So I've done a lot of like just endurance exercise in general in these 20 years of running. Did a lot of triathlons, and then at some point I started getting into like the obstacle course racing, like Tough Mudders, because in the fire service we do a lot of like these exercises where we put all our gear on, and we do like circuit workouts where it's like we'll pull a hose and then we'll throw a ladder, and then we put like hose up on our shoulders and run up and down stairs and do all these things back to back. We'll sledgehammer something. And so I like the idea of like a Tough Mudder, because like you run and then you do something like that requires dexterity and strength, right? Like monkey bars or doing something interesting. So I got really into those and did a ton of them. I don't know, like 60 of them or something like that. And somewhere in the middle of that, they started doing these 24-hour Tough Mudders. And so I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to be going 24 hours, I'm going to be going like a lot further than that. And at the same time, like I met this guy at my local running store who had told me this story about how he had run a marathon in reverse, got to the start line, and then ran the marathon. And I was like, well, that's 52 miles. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, I don't understand. Like at this point in my life, had never heard of ultra running. I didn't know that was a thing. So it was kind of like I learned about ultra running, and then at the same time they were doing this 24 hours Tough Mudder. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll try to run one of these ultras to see what it's like to run further than a marathon. And so I signed up for like a local 50K to get ready for this Tough Mudder, and I ran it, and it was a terrible experience. I think I got almost dead fucking last, but I think that one person might have been after me. I don't know. It was a really brutal experience. And that was my introduction to ultra running. And then I kept doing the Tough Mudders, but then I kept dipping my toe in the ultra like world. I was like, well, so I think my first 50K, I wish I it's not even on ultra sign up because it was such a little local 50K that and I don't know if ultra sign up was big back then, but I think it took me like 9 hours or like maybe 9 hours and 30 minutes. Something crazy. It was up in it was at 7,000 feet and it was up in the mountains and obviously a lot of vert and everything, but still 9 hours. So then I was like, I signed up for another one and then I got like 6 hours and 30 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a huge improvement. And just started, and plus you're running in all these really cool spots. So I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I can run in all these like beautiful trails. And I just ended up liking ultra running more than I liked the obstacle course racing. And so I eventually just sort of transitioned and just started doing more ultras and less obstacle course racing until the point where it's like, now it's all ultras, no obstacle racing. And yeah, I've been doing ultras now for like, I don't know, 10 years or maybe longer. So yeah, that was sort of the start of the ultras, and then obviously I'm still in them. So.
So I've been following along whenever you will post your videos, and I think it's super cool that you do that. Like, I feel like a part of it almost. Like I'm living vicariously through you. But one of the ones that I am intrigued in is Cocodona. There's Cocodona 250, and I know you've done that a few times now. Do you do it 4 actually? More than a few?
Yeah, this year he did the Cocodona monster something. You called it Arizona.
That's next year. That's next year.
Oh, next year.
Yeah. So yeah, I've done Cocodona all 4 years. They've had it 4 years. There's 6 of us left that have done it all 4 years. We're like a little like group of people that we're all friends, and like we all go out there and suffer every year together. Next year I'm doing the Arizona Monster 300, and then like 2 weeks later doing the Cocodona 250. So
wow,
I'm calling it the Coco Monster 550. That'll be that'll be my big thing going on next year. But yeah, Cocodona is it's amazing. Obviously, I keep going back, so there's something pretty special about it. It's an adventure. It's not. I mean, it's a race, but it's quite the adventure. Just, I mean, the distance alone, but then also you're going on some trails that are pretty treacherous and like technical. So there's like some sections that are just kind of like unrunnable. So you just kind of have to like grind into them. There's a lot of runnable sections too, but it's just a long adventure. You start, in the deserts, like near Phoenix, and you end up in Flagstaff, which is like 7,000 feet. So it's kind of like you're running, almost like it feels like you're running uphill the entire time.
Oh, geez.
Obviously there's a lot of up and down, but at the end of the day, there's more up. And then at like mile 240, you have to climb like a 9,000 foot mountain, which is deal. It puts some hair on your chest for sure. Yeah. So, yeah.
So in a race like that, what's your
just a really hard race. There's no lots of people have tried it. A lot of really talented runners, and everyone will pretty much tell you that it's gonna take a lot of soul searching to get that thing done, which I love. I always start off strong and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then like, I fall apart at some point. I do it. I'm the only one that's done it solo and unsupported all 4 years. And, that works out for like maybe the first 3 days. But like on day 4, when you've been out there by yourself for that long, like you really start to maybe lose it a little bit. And sometimes it's hard to like
how much
maintain.
How much sleep do you get during this entire race? Do you ever take little naps?
Oh yeah. I mean, every year I've done it differently. I've been trying to like figure out what the like sweet spot for me is, and I can't figure it out. I mean, yeah. I wish I could tell you that there's like people say you need to sleep within the first 24 hours. There's all these like rules and that certain people do. I don't know what the answer is, quite honestly. this year I did it the fastest I've ever done it, but I fell apart on day 4, and I should have finished probably like 6 hours faster, but I ended up getting hypothermia and ended up spending some time in a medical tent to try to like keep myself back up. But I think I went 51 hours with no sleep, like straight 51 hours. And I took a 30-minute nap. And then after that, I just took like a series of like 10-minute naps until I got hypothermia. And then I think I slept like 2 hours and then made it the rest of the way. And it took me, I think 103 hours. So maybe like 3.5, 4 hours total sleep over 4 days.
That is rough. That is so rough.
Oh my God. I don't.
It was pretty rough.
I mean, at that point, we have this one friend, and she hallucinated during a race, and I think it was a 72-hour race. She walked up to a rock and thought it was a fox. Like, that's when you just start seeing things. But it's impressive, dude. I can't say I've ever been at either of your levels. Like, Erica, you for what you just did the other day. Andy, for all the stuff you do. It's impressive. It's fun to watch. And I really thank you for like documenting all of it and putting it on social media. It's a blast.
Well, I hope it's entertaining. I mean, for me, I kind of like the idea that I'll be able to, like, when I'm older, look back at all this and I used to write these really detailed race reports. Mm-hmm. And I stopped doing that, and I just realized, like, well, now I'm vlogging. So it's like, I don't need to like write a race report because everything's in video, which is, I think, kind of cool too. It's definitely cool for my kids, because my kids can like watch the video and see what I go through. And, on Instagram, I have to do these little 1-minute videos. So it's like, come run 250 miles with me. And it's literally a 1-minute video. But like on TikTok, I can do really long videos, and they're like, they do really, really well on TikTok. Like, I'll have like a 10-minute video that'll get, 5 million views or something like that. So there's a lot of people on TikTok that enjoy my long format content where they can like really watch the whole thing. So
see, now I'm going to have to watch your TikToks, because I feel like I'm just more of the Instagram reels. We have a friend of the pod. Her name's Tara Pterodactyl. I send Tara Pterodactyl her videos to post on our own TikTok. She kind of manages that. Now I'm going to have to like log into the TikTok and check out your longer videos.
On my TikTok, if there's like, you can have like categories, and I have one that's called Come Run 100 Miles With Me, and it has all my videos. And so you don't have to scroll through all the other bullshit.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's I normally do a 1-minute one, and then I do like the long format one, which is normally 6 to 10 minutes long, and it'll be like everything. But that people really enjoy watching me, suffer and have all these horrible things happen to me, and then I keep going. So
I'm actually really excited now. I'm really excited that you told me this. You got these like 10-minute videos, because a big thing I was into a few years ago is Casey Neistat and his daily vlogs. They're always 8 to 12 minutes, the perfect length of a video to watch and get the quick story. So now I am going to log on to the channel tonight once this thunderstorm passes through and the kids go to bed, and I'm going to be like not scrolling but watching these videos. I'm excited now. Listen, man, you've been. Sorry, you go.
No, I was just saying they exist. There's a lot of videos, so. That and my feet videos are the really successful ones.
Oh, we could do a whole episode on only feet. You and Erica could talk for hours. In fact, I know she has that question, but I want to hit with my final question. I am building a list called the Code Brown Commandments. Okay. And a code brown, yes, it could be any shitty moment where you crap yourself, but it's really any oh crap moment, like running into an alligator on the course. Or I always said a bear. And so we're creating these Code Brown commandments, which is like running advice for someone to avoid a Code Brown, to avoid any oh crap moment. Some examples, like my own Code Brown commandment is diaper rash cream, because I have babies, cures chafing overnight. You just lather that diaper rash cream on nice and thick, and then you're good to go the next day. So what is a Code Brown commandment you could add to us? We're going to create this list. It's going to be like, thou shall not leave a trace. That's another one a guy picked. Don't leave a trace.
Right. I mean, my number one, I'd say two. One, like I always bring wet wipes. That's probably a given.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to take lube and put it in a plastic bag. And then when I need to apply it to my 3D parts, I just flip the bag inside out, put my hand in it, and then you can just get down there after you shit, or just maybe you're starting to chafe, and you can recoat yourself and not worry about getting any nastiness on your hand. And then
That's
you just
great.
flip the bag back inside out, seal it, and then it's ready to be thrown out when you get to the next aid station.
That's genius. Holy shit.
And it doesn't weigh anything.
Yeah.
So if you buy lube in bulk, you just squeeze some in, and then it's like having a glove. And I used to run with gloves, and I would put it all over my glove and then get in there. But this is actually a better method.
That is so
like that.
smart.
I like that. Add that to the list, Erica.
Smart. Yeah, I might actually start using that myself. It would have been nice to know just this last weekend, but that's so.
A lot of people do.
So
Yeah. I need to remake that. I've made that video a few times, and it's always pretty successful. So I need to. It's always funny when like I throw out these little tips and tricks, and then I see people using them at ultras, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's my trick. But it's good.
I'll clip this for you, and I'll play it when your episode drops, and you can be like, oh, there it is. Let's do it.
Perfect.
Let's drop this.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm so bummed that my internet is not working correctly and that I lost you guys for a while, because I wanted to talk about your awesome sense of style with your jorts. I wanted to talk about like UTMB. There's just so much we didn't get to talk. Well, I didn't get to talk about at least. But if we're going into some of our final questions, we have a Spotify playlist, and we like to invite our guests to add a song to it. So it could be anything that you're feeling at the moment, anything that pumps you up. I don't even know if you run with music. You say you raw dog a lot of stuff, so you might not even run with music. But is there anything you'd like to add to our list?
Let's see. Do you have Young the Giant? I think the song's called My Body.
We do not.
Great song, and that is not on the list.
All right,
that's
perfect.
A great song.
Yeah, add that one. I love to listen to that when I'm like at mile 99.
Pumps you up. The last little bit, you're
song.
almost there.
One more. I lied. I got one more. For you.
Good.
And I'm going to piss Eric off that I'm asking one more final question.
Go ahead.
But I just got an ice bath. I set it up for the first time this week. I see, and it's super hot here. It's like 95 degrees. So even when I throw a bag in and everything, I don't have that like cold ice bath yet. But what's your advice for a first timer like me? I see you do these ice baths all the time. How do you build up? What would you give advice to someone like me jumping in for the first time?
I mean, it's going to get easier, but it's always going to be hard. I think the big thing is you just got to like really learn how to like control your breathing, because like when you get into really cold water, your body goes into shock. So you immediately start to hyperventilate. So you really need to focus on slowing your breathing down and just focusing on that. There's all these, Wim Hof and all. I've never really studied any of that. For me, I just do like a deep inhale and then like a secondary inhale and then a long exhale, which is kind of it's a method to like reduce stress and anxiety. And I just do that on repeat. And, that mixed with like some music sometimes, like if you find like a song, say you want to stay in for 2 minutes, find a 2-minute song and play it, and then just listen to the music and know that when the song's over, you can get out. Psychologically, that can like help you out a lot too. Yeah. Or, if you only want to stay in for like a minute, then find a song and fast forward it to when there's just a minute left and hit play. And then, when like the song's over, you can get out. But, as time goes by, I used to be all heroic and do like 7 to 10 minutes at a time. But ever since I got a sauna and I go back and forth, I don't do more than like 3 minutes.
I
get a lot of reward from that. So I've just kind of stuck with it. And 2 2 to 3 minutes, I feel like you're going to get what you need to get out of it. And yeah,
So I got
a
the
little
sauna
music.
too. So you go back and forth.
Yeah, that's really beneficial if you can do that. In fact, there's a Huberman podcast on hot and cold protocols. If you Google it, and it's a good one to listen to on the cold and hot, combining them. But yeah, I'll do like 15 to 20 minutes in the sauna, and then I'll jump in the cold plunge for like 3 minutes, then go back in the sauna, and then go back in the cold plunge. It's the high you get off of that is way better than the high you get from just cold plunging.
All right,
It's pretty amazing.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, you get so uncomfortable in that sauna. You're like, oh my God, I just want to get out. And then you get in the cold plunge and you're like, holy shit, I just want to get back in that sauna. And it's just like this really weird, rush that you get as you go in and out of each one.
Nice.
Awesome. I can't wait. I'm going to document it. I'm going to take a video. I'm going to send it to you when it happens. It'll probably be before this drops, but I got to get it cold. Like right now, it's still warm. I seriously did it 2 days ago. I built this thing. My 3-year-old just wanted to jump in. Yeah. We're going to get it cold. And once this heat wave passes through, I think it'll be easier to keep cold.
Yeah. I think what you got to do, I did the ice for a long time because I wasn't sure that I was like into it. And eventually I just had to buy a chiller. It's like you just have to like, if it's something that you think that you're going to continue to do for a long period of time, then the chiller is the way to go. And what you can do is if you go on Alibaba or like one of those like Chinese sites, you can find like those inflatable cold plunges with chillers for a lot cheaper than the ones that you'd buy in America. And I know quite a few friends that have done that way. So, it's coming from China, but like all the like big companies that do it in America are buying it from the same site. They're just having the Chinese people put their logo on it, and then they're buying like 100 of them. Yeah. So, you can save like $3,000-$4,000 just by doing it that way. Or like that company, The Plunge, they sell like refurbished ones that are a lot cheaper than if you buy like the brand new ones. So I have a Plunge and I freaking love it. I think it's like the best one, but I like those inflatable ones too.
Yeah. This one's pretty cool. We just got it, just set it up. I'm pretty excited. I'm nervous at the same time.
Nice.
It's all this nervous and fun energy, but man, this was so cool. Andy, thank you so much for coming on the pod. I know we could talk to you for hours, so I hope one day you'll come back, maybe when a thunderstorm doesn't roll through New Hampshire and kick Erica's power off and knock her off the internet, and then her voice and the audio is all delayed. We'll talk about the jorts and everything. You were so cool, so gracious with your time. We've gone well over an hour now, so thank you so much.
Of course.
I really enjoyed this. It was great, man. It was great. Erica, you have anything, any final words for Andy?
I just have to say thank you as well. I'm going to keep following along with your journey, especially with, what is it, the Crazy Mountain 100 that you have coming up in a little while. And I know that one's going to be a doozy, but I hope that everything goes smoothly.
That's the next one.
Yep, no injuries, and that you can just keep your streak alive.
And no alligators.
No alligators.
Right.
No bears.
I got to bring bear spray for Crazy Mountain, so that'll be my first race with bear spray.
Yeah. Well, this was fun. Erica, you're going to get to hear about the bear bells later when you listen to this pod. You missed something about the bear bell. So this was fun, guys. I really hope you enjoyed Andy on the pod. That was fun. Andy, thank you, guys. Andy Glaze on the On the Runs podcast. That was fun.
Thank you.